The hardest part of prison is not the bars. It's the way the world keeps moving while you stay still. My name is Harold, and I'm 86 years old, and I survived this place, but I lost my family in the years I've been locked up, and that was the real sentence. When I first came in, I treated my time like a bill. I thought if I paid it in full, the receipt would bring me back to the life I left. I imagined my wife standing in the same kitchen, the same curtains in the window, my daughter still calling out from the hallway, my son still a boy who needed me. I pictured them paused in place, holding their breath until I returned. Prison teaches you quick that nothing waits. Count comes whether you're ready or not. Chow comes whether you're hungry or not. The yard opens, the yard closes. Lockdown hits because somebody in another building made a choice, and the whole place gets punished together. And outside, birthdays and graduations and ordinary Tuesdays come and go like weather. You don't feel them on your skin, but you see the damage in the distance, in the way voices change, in the way your name starts sounding like a story people tell in past tense. Before prison, I looked like the kind of man who belonged. I worked steady. I fixed what broke. I brought home groceries and paid the light bill on time. I was the one who tightened a loose doorknob, who checked the tires before a long drive, who told the kids to put their coats on because I didn't want them sick. I did the visible parts of being a husband and father, but I also carried a private pride that made me careless. I wanted more money than my paycheck offered, and I wanted it without admitting it was greed. I wanted respect without earning it, and I dressed it up as being tired of being overlooked. I wanted to feel like the world couldn't tell me no, and I called that being a man who takes care of his own. I didn't land here because of one dramatic night. I landed here because of choices that felt small while I was making them. A friend I should have avoided, a favor that turned into a pattern, a job that paid fast if you didn't ask questions. I told myself I was doing it for my family, which was the cleanest lie I could find, because it made me sound noble even while I was stepping into dirt. The truth is, I liked the feeling of being needed by the wrong people. I liked that certain men answered when I called. I liked that doors opened when I showed up. I liked the way it made me feel bigger than my ordinary life. I told myself I could bend rules and still be a good father, like morality was something you could schedule around. Then the line I'd been stepping over finally broke under my weight, and everything snapped shut. You don't understand what consequences means until you hear a courtroom go quiet and realize your family is sitting behind you, listening to strangers describe you like you're already gone. I remember my wife twisting a tissue until it tore. I remember my daughter staring at me like she couldn't place my face. I remember my son looking at the floor so hard it looked like he was trying to fall through it. When the judge said the years, it didn't feel real until the cuffs clicked and I stood up and realized my hands no longer belonged to me. The first night inside, the bunk felt like a shelf someone slid me onto. Thin mattress, metal frame, bleach smell, the kind of lighting that makes everybody look tired. A man above me turned over and the whole bed rattled like a warning. I lay there staring at the ceiling stains, counting them the way you count anything in here, because counting is something you can control when everything else is taken away. I told myself I would do my time clean. I told myself I would come out older but intact. I told myself my family would be waiting because love, in my head, was a fixed point. Even in that first week, though, I felt the truth creeping in. Not like a punch, more like cold air under a door. In the beginning, I lived by the prison phone. The phone is bolted to the wall like a dull black ear, always a little sticky from too many hands. The cord is short on purpose, so you stand close, shoulder to shoulder with men pretending not to listen, and you talk into plastic like it can carry your whole life. There's a posted list of rules, a timer you can't argue with, and the sound of other men's grief leaking through the cracks between sentences. My wife answered most of the time back then. Her voice would wobble at the start and then settle into something practical. She'd ask if I was eating, if I was safe, if I was staying away from trouble. I would say yes to everything, because if I told her the truth about how scared I was, it would make her life heavier, and I still thought my job was to keep my family from feeling what I had done. My daughter Emily was 17 when I came in, old enough to be angry, young enough to still hope. At first she'd talk about school and friends and small dramas. Sometimes she'd go quiet and I would fill the space with fast sentences, trying to patch the hole with sound. My son, Caleb, was 14. When he got on the line, he'd say, "Yes, sir," and "No, sir." At first it sounded like respect. Later I understood it was distance. He was keeping space because closeness hurt. Prison time moves strange. The days feel heavy, but the years slide by. Count, chow, work detail, yard, lights out. You learn the sound of keys, the rhythm of boots in the hall, the way the unit changes tone when something's about to happen. You learn to wait for your name at the window, for your turn at the phone, for mail call like it's a second kind of prayer. You learn how quickly you can start calling this routine, life, and how dangerous that is. The outside didn't stop while I was learning prison. Seasons changed without me. Emily graduated without me. Caleb got taller without me. My wife got older without me. That's the thing about absence. It doesn't just remove you from moments, it removes you from the slow glue that holds a family together. The small repairs, the shared jokes, the ordinary arguments that end with somebody putting a plate in front of you anyway, the quiet proof that you belong. At first I still thought I could manage it with effort. I called on schedule, I wrote quick letters, I asked for details like a man taking inventory. I thought information was closeness. I didn't understand that love isn't a report. Then came the moment that split my life into before and after, and it happened in the most ordinary way, the way most real losses happen. Not with screaming, with a phone call. It was a plain Tuesday, beans at chow, the same TV noise in the day room, men arguing loud over nothing. I was waiting for my turn at the phone when an officer at the desk called my name and told me my wife had left a message and I needed to call home. A message in prison is never just a message. It drops into your stomach like a stone. When my turn came, my hands shook so much I hit the numbers twice. The line rang and rang, and when my wife answered, she didn't say hello the way she used to. She said, "Harold, you have to listen to me." Not angry, not cruel, just tired. And that tiredness told me she had been carrying the weight alone. She told me she couldn't do it anymore. She told me she was exhausted from being both parents, from holding the bills and the emotions, from trying to keep my name from turning poisonous in the house. She told me Emily had stopped bringing friends over because she was ashamed. She told me Caleb acted like he didn't have a father at all, and she didn't blame him. Then she said she had filed for divorce. I started talking fast, bargaining like a man at an auction. I said I'd be home sooner than it looked. I said I was changing. I said I loved her, as if love could erase the years I had taken from her. She let me talk until I ran out of breath, and then she said she still cared about me as the father of her children, but she could not keep living inside my sentence. I asked for Emily. When her voice came on, I recognized it and didn't. It had grown older. The last time I held her in my mind, she was still a kid. Now she sounded like a woman who'd learned to steady herself without me. I said her name, and I wanted to hear Dad. She said, "Hi, Harold," polite, careful, like she was holding something that could cut her. I told her I was sorry. She listened, and then she said she was getting married in the spring. My chest tightened so hard I had to grip the receiver. I didn't know the man. I didn't know the life. I wasn't part of the story anymore, just the backstory. I asked if I would be invited, and I hated myself for how small it sounded. She took a breath and said she didn't want her wedding to feel like a courtroom exhibit. She said she didn't want a hole in the room where her father should be. Then Caleb got on. His voice had dropped. He said he didn't have much time. I asked about baseball, and he said he didn't play anymore. I asked what he liked now, and he said he didn't know. I asked if he was doing okay, and he said, "I'm fine," the same way I used to say it when I was lying. Then he said he had to go, and the call ended with that dead tone that always feels colder than silence. I stood there holding the receiver after the click, listening to nothing, and another man stepped in for his turn like my grief was just part of the schedule. I walked back to my bunk and sat down hard, staring at the underside of the top mattress. I tried to remember the last time my son laughed in front of me. I tried to remember the weight of my wife's hand on my shoulder. The memories were there, but they felt like photos left in the sun too long. The colors had started to fade. That was the day prison finally told me the truth. The court gave me years. Time gave me distance. Absence gave me consequences no judge had to announce. After that call, I didn't become wise. I became hollow. I went to chow and tasted nothing. I went to the yard and walked laps without counting them. I started avoiding the phone, which sounds backwards, but it made sense. The phone had become a mirror, and I couldn't stand what it showed me. Every ring reminded me I had turned myself into a voice on a wall, a scheduled interruption, a reminder of pain. A chaplain caught me one afternoon and asked how I was doing. My mouth tried to say I'm fine, because pride is stubborn even in a cage, but I was tired of lying. I told him I didn't know how to be a father from behind glass. I told him I didn't know how to ask my family to keep loving me when my choices had made loving me harder. He told me to write the truth without trying to control the outcome, because control is what put most of us in here in the first place. So I bought a cheap pad of paper from commissary, and I started writing letters. Not the old letters full of promises and plans. Plain letters, slow letters, letters that didn't ask them to take care of me, letters that didn't pretend we could go back. To my wife, I wrote that I finally understood what I had done to her life. Not just the shame, but the workload, the constant fear, the lonely decisions. I told her she deserved peace, and that I was sorry I tried to make her find it inside my mess. To Emily, I wrote that I was proud of her for building a life in spite of what I'd done. I wrote that I understood if she didn't want me in the middle of her joy. I asked for a photo someday, not to hurt her, just to let me see her face in the life she earned. To Caleb, I wrote that he didn't owe me loyalty for the sake of my ego. I wrote that I was sorry for making him carry my shadow. I told him that if he ever wanted to talk, I would listen more than I spoke. I didn't add advice. I didn't tell him what kind of man to be. I just told him I saw what I had taken and I regretted it. I held those letters in my locker for days, taking them out at night and reading them, making sure I wasn't smuggling excuses between the lines. In prison, you learn how good you are at hiding the knife inside a compliment. I didn't want to do that anymore. Then I mailed them and waited, which is another kind of sentence. While I waited, I remembered a visitation from years earlier, before the distance got too wide. They brought Emily and Caleb in on a Saturday. We sat at a bolted table under bright lights that made everyone look tired. My wife tried to smile, but it sat wrong on her face like a mask she was forcing into place for the kids. Emily kept smoothing her shirt like she didn't know what to do with her hands. Caleb was all elbows and knees then, growing faster than my eyes could keep up with. I reached across the table without thinking, the way a father does, and the officer cleared his throat. I pulled my hand back like a child being corrected. We talked about school and chores and the neighbor's dog, normal things, but every sentence had a fence around it. When the time was up and they stood to go, Caleb hesitated like he wanted to hug me, and then he didn't. He looked at my uniform and then at the floor. Emily kissed her mother's cheek and whispered something I couldn't hear. My wife looked at me, and her eyes said, "We will get through today," and then the door closed behind them, and I was left with the sound of chairs scraping and men pretending not to watch. That memory used to make me angry. I used to blame the rules, blame the officers, blame the building. Later, I understood the rules were just the final layer. The real wall was the one I built the day I chose my pride over my family. Mail call is a small theater in here. Men pretend they don't care, and then their faces give them away. When your name gets called, the paper in your hand is either relief or grief. I used to think mail was just information. Now I know it's proof that someone, somewhere, still remembered you long enough to put a stamp on it. The first reply came from Emily. A thin envelope with neat handwriting. My hand shook opening it. Inside was a short note and a photo, just her and her husband in bright daylight, smiling like they deserved to. She wrote that she read my letter twice. She wrote that she wasn't ready for big talks, but she appreciated that I didn't argue with her boundaries. At the bottom she wrote, "I hope you take care of yourself." It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reunion. It was a thread. In prison, a thread can keep you from falling. Caleb didn't write for a long time. Weeks turned into months. I tried not to interpret the silence as cruelty. Silence is what people use when they're protecting themselves. When he finally did write, it was a postcard with only a few lines. He said he got my letter. He said he didn't know what to say. Then he wrote one sentence that made my throat close up. He wrote, "I'm trying to be better than what happened." I read that sentence until it felt carved into me. My son was not asking me to fix him. He was telling me my choices had become his caution sign, and he was trying to climb out of it. From there, my steps were small because anything bigger would have been another lie. I stopped calling just to hear myself talk. When I did call, I asked questions and let the answers stand without trying to steer them. I let conversations end when they needed to. I learned that you cannot demand closeness from people you've left alone for years. Sometimes my ex-wife answers and we speak carefully, like two people who lived through a storm and don't pretend the house is still the same. I don't try to talk her into loving me. I ask if the car is running. I ask if she's eating right. I listen. The silence between us is long sometimes, but it is honest. With Emily, I ask about her days. I let her tell me what she wants to tell me, and I don't punish her with my sadness when she holds things back. Once I heard a baby fussing in the background. I didn't ask questions that would make her close up. I just smiled into the receiver and said she sounded happy. She said she was tired but good. With Caleb, the calls are still careful. But once in a while he laughs, a short, real laugh, and it hits me like light through a crack. I don't chase it. I just hold it quietly and let him be a man, not the boy I left behind. I used to think punishment was what the court handed you. Now I know punishment is also what time does to love when you keep choosing absence. The prison took my freedom. My choices took my place at the table. My family had to learn how to celebrate without me, how to heal without me, how to become themselves without my shadow. Some nights I stand near the prison phone and watch other men press their lives into that receiver. I see their faces change with every sentence. I see them become husbands and sons and fathers for 10 minutes, then hang up and return to the unit like nothing happened. I understand why they keep calling. The phone is just plastic and wire, but it carries the weight of everything you didn't say when you were free. Here's the thing I wish I understood earlier. There are punishments that don't come from a court. They come from time and absence, and they are quiet and steady. They don't slam a gavel. They just keep happening. They turn your daughter into someone you love from afar. They turn your son into a man whose childhood you missed. They turn your marriage into paperwork and memories and a voice that sounds tired. If you're listening from the outside, I'm not asking you to feel sorry for me. I earned these walls. I'm telling you what it feels like to be alive and still miss your own life. It feels like hearing your daughter's voice and realizing you don't know the rhythm of her days. It feels like hearing your son speak and understanding you trained him to keep distance. It feels like sitting on a bunk at night and realizing the real sentence is not being locked up, it's being absent from the people you love until they learn to live without you. Stay close while you still can. Say the plain words while you still have a seat at the table. Don't trade the ordinary for something that feels powerful for a moment. A court can take your freedom, but time and absence will take your place, and that is the punishment you never see coming.